Series Programming in C. In this module, we will focus on learning array of structures and arrays within the structure. These two are the major important concept we will learn on this particular module. So, the outline of this module, we will learn about array of structure usage in C and the basic operations, how to go for arrays within a structure and its examples. First of all, we should know the difference between an array and a structure. An array is a collection of data of same data type, whereas a structure is a collection of data of having different or heterogeneous data type. Now, we will look at the difference between arrays and structures. Array is a non-primitive data type, whereas structure or struct is a user defined data type. Of course, array can also be defined as user defined data type, but the values which we can store in an array will be of the one which is already existing with the compiler, say the basic data types int, char and double, float. Whereas, in the case of structure, we can create our own data type. We can determine what are the values that we are going to store in a structure. So, that is why we call structure as a user defined data type. Secondly, array declaration is done using the square brackets and not using a keyword, whereas in the case of structure we will be using the keyword struct. An array searching and traversal is very easy and faster, whereas in the case of structure it is a bit complex and also it is slower. The very basic reason is that in the case of array, the values are stored in the contiguous memory location, which is not necessary in the case of structures. And bit field is not possible in an array, whereas in structures the bit fields are also possible. Array is a collection of elements of homogeneous data type, whereas structure is a collection of heterogeneous data type. This is what we have seen right now at the beginning of the difference between arrays and structures. So, here in the case of arrays, we will be storing the array with the same type of values. In the case of structure, the value stored in a structure variable will be of different data type. Say for instance, if we are going to have a structure for an employee, the employee will have employee number and name, which is of two different data types. These two different data types we can keep in a single structure variable. So, array uses a subscripts within square brackets for element accessing. So, if I want to access a particular element, particular index in an array, which can be accessed using the square brackets. So, what we can do here, see here we can see that we are declaring an array named ARR and we represent the subscript within the square brackets. The square brackets denote that which is the position of the element which we are trying to access. So, here we can see that in this array has two elements 100 and 200. ARR of 1 will be having the value 100, whereas ARR of 2 will be having the value 200. The subscript which we represent inside the square brackets may start from 0 or 1, that depends on how we are representing in the program. So, this statement is actually used to initialize the array by declaring the array with the two elements, and we are trying to supply values for those two elements using the initialization statement. The initialization statement will have the values enclosed within curly braces, right. So, this is the way the array elements will be stored and can be accessed. One important point is to note down is that the array elements will be stored in contiguous memory location or continuous memory location. So, that when I have the base address of the array, I can reach the next elements by just incrementing the address values. Whatever be the number of bytes occupied by integer which I am trying to store in the array. If integer's data type is of 4 bytes with respect to the compiler which you use. So, the first 4 bytes will be used for occupying the first value and then the next 4 bytes will be continuing with the next value. So, how many number of elements which we have in the array, it goes with the contiguous way of storing the values, and so that if we know the base address of the array, we will be able to reach the particular element by representing the element number in the subscript within the square brackets. When I want to reach element 15, so I can just specify 15 inside the square brackets in the case of arrays. Whereas in the case of structure, so what we can do, we can declare a structure variable as an employee and we can go for creating the members, employee number and name. So, if we want to learn more on structures basics, you can refer to the previous modules and you can learn how is the structure used, how we do the copy process, how we do the compare process. So, for those operations on structures you can refer to the previous modules, right. As of now, we will learn how structures are being used and how we are able to collaborate with structures and arrays, how we can go for declaring array of structures and structures in an array. So, that is what is going to be the focus on this particular session. So, here we can see that the employee number carries a value integer and name carries a string. So, how to initialize a structure? This is a way we can do. While declaring the structure members, we can define a structure variable name and then use a equal to operator, we can initialize the values of a structure, right. So, arrays of structures, both arrays and structures has got its own advantages. Then people thought, why do not we incorporate the combination of arrays and structures, so that we can get the benefits of both arrays and structures usage in C. And on account of that, an array of structure is simply an array where each element is a structure variable. So, what happens, as usual we create an array of the basic data types, say int array name of the number of elements. See how we declare an array, int array name of the size of elements. So, this is how we declare an array, right. So, what I am going to do, instead of this basic data type, it can be replaced with the name of the structure, then it becomes array of structures. So, simply what I will do, instead of this, I will make it as employee. Employee is my own data type, user defined data type. So, I can go with the declaration of array of 2 employees. So, we define a person structure with name and age as members. An array of 2 person structure is declared and each element is populated with different people details. So, we can simply use a for loop in this case. As we apply for arrays, we can go with the increment process of structures, right. So, we will see some more in detail with the examples, right. So, what we can see in the screen is the declaration of a structure named A, and we are going for defining the structure by declaring an array. So, here we can say that ARR is the array of structures. In this case. Okay. So, what we are defining here? We are defining array ARR with 2 elements. Those 2 elements are of type A. A is of type structure. So, this is how we can define an array of structures in C. Okay. We have defined the array of structures. Then, how to assign values to the array of structures? Anyway, the member inside the structure will have to be assigned with the value individually, even though it is an array. So, what we do here, ARR of 0 represents the first employee details or the first structure details. We are having a member named VAR in the structure. So, we can assign the value 10 to the element referred by ARR of 0. So, it means that in the array, the first location ARR of 0 will be assigned for the first structure variable. In this case, it is structure A. Structure A is first variable ARR of 0. Similarly, ARR of 1 will be assigned with another structure A type with value with the reference or name to be ARR of 1. So, from using ARR of 0, if I refer the member VAR, ARR of 0 using I refer the member VAR, it represents the value 10 which we assign to ARR of 0. Similarly, I can again use the same member with respect to ARR of 1. So, ARR of 1 VAR will be assigned with the value 20. Even though we are using two different structures and we are assigning two different values, we can simply access the array elements as we do access with the same simple arrays using for loop. So, I can just make a use of a for loop running from 0 to 2 because we have two elements. We can just access the members ARR of 1 dot I dot VAR, where I is going to be the control variable of the loop. Okay. Simply we can make use of one for loop for moving from one structure to the other. But one thing we have to note here is the arrays will be following the way of contiguous memory location storage. So, here also the memory will be allocated for each structure individually in a contiguous way. So, that can be represented using this figure, array of structure representation. So, here we are taking a student structure, the student structure having the members to be name, roll number, address, marks, and we are defining array of 5 students here. So, what happens? For the first location, it points to student of 0, STU of 0, which is the first structure. The first structure will be having the reference to all the members individually. So, STU 0 dot name, STU 0 dot roll number, STU 0 dot address and marks. According to the size of the particular variable, say for example, we are defining name to be of 60 characters. So, what happens? 60 bytes will be allocated for name, and then roll number of integer type, which is of standard 4 bytes, will be assigned to roll number, and address will be of again 60 bytes because char takes 1 byte, 60 elements 60 bytes. So, marks will be again floating point value which takes 8 bytes for storage. So, ST of marks will be of 8 bytes. So, totally the size of the structure will be calculated and that many locations will be allocated for the first structure variable represented using an array subscript. So, here you can see there is an array subscript 0 used. The subscript of array is now 1 used. The subscript of array is 4 because the array has been defined with 5 elements starting from 0 to 4. So, this is how array could be represented in memory. Right. Why do we need array of structures? Suppose if we have 50 employees and we need to store the data of 50 employees as a data set. We can define 50 different variables of structure of employee type, that is possible. But let us imagine a bigger scenario where we need 1000 employees. So, declaring the structure variables for 1000 employees as given here will be a tedious process. It is not possible also to declare 1000 variables of the structure type. So, instead we can go for defining a structure having 1000 structure variables, so that each location or each index will be representing one employee details. Again, each element will be having multiple instances of the data. So, one particular structure, one particular array will have 1000 elements. Those 1000 elements, each element will be referring to multiple data sets or multiple data types. Okay. So, this is actually useful for managing large data sets such as a list of employees, list of students or list of products or items. So, which is having a consistent structure. The data set should have a consistent structure, then we can make the particular structure to be mapped with the array. Since array uses the for loop, it will be easier for us to go with iterating the loop to access the next structure elements. So, a structure can be initialized using an initializer list, okay. And then array of structures can be initialized using a nested initializer list. And nested braces improve clarity and maintain correct member order, in the sense that how do we do initialization of the array of structures? The case is I can go for defining the values of one particular structure within one curly braces, right. The complete set of elements can be again enclosed with the whole outside curly braces. So, this way of storing the values we will call it as nested braces way of storing the values. So, we can have inner braces to represent the values of each structure and outer braces to represent the value of the complete array. So, we will see an example of for initialization. Let us define a structure, same structure A with a simple variable member, integer value and a character. So, how do I define too many or more than one element here? We will define an array 1 of having 2 elements. So, this is a way I can initialize. This will be the value of the first structure variable, which possesses one integer type value and one character type. So, accordingly I have enclosed within single quotes, and there is another value which is enclosed again within curly braces. The whole array can be represented using again closing braces, right. Then array of 2, this is one more array and this is one more array. So, now we have 3 arrays of structures, right. So, here in the second part we can see that this is also a way of defining the initializing the values without having the inner curly braces. We can keep on initializing the value, that is also possible, and this is a third way of initializing the values. But here it is better to go for this way, which will improve the clarity of the program, which will give the user particular readability that actually what we are doing, what is the process that is being done using the arrays, right. So, here this for loop is to print the values of array 1, this for loop is to print the values of array 2, and this is to print the values of array 3. So, the output will be the similar one, whatever way of initializing the values to the array elements we do, we can see the output will be of the similar way it is following. Now, how to access and update the members of the structure in case if it is stored in the form of an array. So, to access the members of a structure in an array, we will be using the index of the array element followed by the dot operator. So, here we can see usually if it is going to be a simple structure, we would have used the structure variable name and the member name like this, right. Here there is a small change that here we will also have to introduce the index name in order to access the array of structures, right. So, here ARR name is the name of this array of structures, index is the index of the structure element in the array, and member name is the corresponding member which we are trying to access exactly. So, we will see a small example here. In the case of printf statement, we are using arr1.c, arr1.c equal to z, right. So, here what we are trying to do, arr is the array name 1 is the index name and C is the member of the structure. So, this is how we can have access to the members and we can update its contents if required. Then for traversing the structure values in an array, okay, how we do it? Simply using a for loop. So, we can see here the same example of having 5 array elements and we are trying to store 5 elements using the nested braces format, and we are simply using a for loop to access or to traverse from one location, one address location to the other in an array. Since array uses the contiguous way of storing the values, we can simply go using the for loop by moving to the next locations, and we can access a member using the index value arr of I dot var. So, here I refers to the control variable. Every time it keeps incrementing from 0 to 5. So, it represents arr of 0 dot var, arr of 0 dot c. For the second iteration, it goes with arr of 1 dot var and arr of 1 dot c. So, this is how the traversal of the array of structure is being done. Okay. There is one more way that how to find the size of array of structures, because we might have used the size of operator for finding the size of an array. Now, if it includes the structures too, how to find its size? So, simply the same way we can also make use of size of operator here. Here inside the size of operator, we need to mention the array name. So, array name according to this example, it is students. If we just specify that, automatically it computes the size of the array elements including the number of bytes it occupies. Say for instance, char 50 locations, so 50 bytes. Int, if it takes 2 bytes for integer storage, which is 2, and for float if it takes 4 bytes, it is going to be 4. So, totally we will be having 50 plus 2 plus 4 elements or size, and since it is going to be operated for 3 array elements, it combines or it calculates the size of or the number of bytes it uses for storing the structure array. So, accordingly we get the output to be 180. Okay. So, this example shows the way that we can make use of declaring the array of structures. So, here the student structure is being defined with the number of elements to be 4, okay, and we are inside the structure variable, we are defining 4 elements, 4 structures, and here at the right side we can see that we can get the output on defining the structures individually, but it is stored in the form of an array. We will now move on to the next concept, array within a structure. Okay, so, from the term itself we will be able to understand that we will declare an array as a one of the member of the structure. As of now we have seen that the character array is defined as one of the member of the structure, which itself is an example of using the concept of array within structures. So, for example, suppose we have an employee and we need to store the data of his or her weekly attendance. We need to define a structure of type employee and store the data within that. However, declaring and handling the 7 variables of each day of the week is not an easy task. So, what we do? We declare a structure employee by having the values to be independent members of day 1 to day 7. But we can find an array within a structure whose data type will be of int, so that the process will be made very easy. Instead of creating 7 individual members, I can create an array of having 7 members in order to address this scenario. So, there the arrays within a structure will help us in reducing the complexity, right. So, here we can see that instead of storing 7 data members, I can simply go for defining an array with 7 elements, right. So, we can define one of the member of the structure to be an array. So, in that case we can see how it can be initialized while initializing the structure value. So, while initializing the structure variable, I should use the curly braces to store the number of elements which we are going to have inside the array. So, this is how we can initialize and declare the array within a structure. So, here there is an example. We can see in case if we want to access a particular value of an array inside a structure or within a structure. So, what we need to do? We can see that structure is the first way of storing the array. So, we need to use the structure name as the first reference, and then within that structure we are having an array to be an element or a member. So, we can mention its array name, and for that array is going to be a collection of data. So, we need to represent what is a subscript value in order to represent or in order to point a particular member or particular value. So, we can access the elements of an array within a structure using the dot operator along with the array index inside the array subscript operator. So, arrays within a structure, we need to represent the dot operator of structure. For array we need to use the index or the subscript operator, right. So, here we can see an example down that we are defining a structure student in which one of the member is going to be an array, right. So, while initializing the value to this particular structure variable, we can just make use of struct to student, define the variable, and here we can go for nested curly braces. In case if you are going to have an array, those 3 array elements can be mentioned while initializing its value, right. So, in case if we want to mention or represent or access a particular index, so that can be done as following the same pattern of syntax, say structure name dot array name of index. So, structure variable is S, marks is the name of the array, 1 is its position. So, here the position starts from 0, 1, 2. So, 1 in the 1 location we have the value 90. So, the output will be 90, right. So, this is a way an particular array element inside a structure within a structure can be accessed. So, example we can see for arrays within a structure. This is going to be a complete program example. So, here we can see that we define a structure with the name employee, and we have an array inside the structure with 7 elements, integer elements. So, while initializing the structure variable emp, we can see that there is a string and there is a 1, there is a string and there is an id, and inside square curly braces we can mention the array. So, this is what we can call it as array within a structure. Okay. So, even though character is an array, we are simply using double quotes to mention the array, the string, whereas in the case of integer we need to explicitly use a curling braces to represent its values. And while representing or while accessing its values, we can just make use of employee.id, employee.name for representing a non-array, whereas for accessing an array we should use a for loop. So, using the for loop for 7 elements, we can just make use of structure name dot array name dot subscript. So, this is a way we can make use of accessing the array. So, here we can see the output to be the values of name and employee ID and 7 elements from the array attendance. So, on recollecting the way of using arrays within a structure and array of structures, we can see that array within a structure is used to contain an array of as one of the structure members, whereas array of structures you can create an array in which each element is going to be of a particular structure type. So, it can be an employee type, it can be a student type, it can be a product type, it can be an item type. So, that is how we go for using array of structures. The syntax for creating or using the array within a structure is, we define a structure and use one of the member to be an array as this. In the case of using array of structures, define the structure to be an array. So, define the structure to be an array. In the case of while accessing the members, so in the case of arrays within a structure, it can be accessed using the dot operator as usual as a structure member. In the case of using array of structure, we need to even have array indexing or array subscript in order to access a particular member. The access elements, the elements of the array can be accessed by referring to structure name, then array name, and then what is the subscript or the index can be used. In the case of using array of structures, use the array name and index and refer to the member which we are trying to access. Comparing the memory structure, array elements are stored sequentially inside the structure. So, padding depends on structure layout and not on the array size, whereas in the case of array of structures, each structure element is stored sequentially, but padding may exist inside each structure because we are creating a array of structures. So, in each element inside the array is going to be a complete structure. If required, we can do padding, or otherwise it is suitable for the particular structure type. So, we can see the example of taking a book record. So, here I am declaring the structure with the name book, the book title, book price and number of pages. Okay. So, we are defining, what is this? We are defining an array of structures. So, this program includes both the concept of using array of structures as well as arrays within a structure. So, for this we are going for the concept of array of structures, and this uses the concept of array within a structure. Right. So, since it uses array of structures, we can see that the for loop is used to access the array elements individually and using the array subscript. Right. So, here we can see that if I am using b of I dot title, the control variable I takes a value from 0 to 3, right. So, if I say b of I dot title, which includes the book 1, that is b of 0 dot title, then b of 1 dot price, then b of 1 dot pages, right. So, this is how we can see that how arrays within a structure and array of structures are used for accessing the elements of a book record. So, we can see the output to be like this: list of books. So, for every book we can see that the title, price and pages values are going to be different, because book we are defining it as a structure. Even though it is a structure, we are creating an array of structures with 3 elements. So, those 3 elements are going to be 3 different structures. So, every structure has 3 types of data, which is going to be a string, a floating point value and an integer. So, here we can see that a structure collects the data of heterogeneous data type, but still one complete structure can be stored as an array, because array is a way of storing data of same data type. For what I am trying to do, I am trying to create an array to store the data of type book, right. So, we are creating an array. In the array all the data are going to be of same data type, which is going to be book, whereas book is going to be a structure which is going to have different data types. So, by doing so, we are trying to merge we are trying to combine the benefits of going for using arrays which are able to store data of same data type, and structures which are going to store data of different data type. So, in case if we want to go with the concept of handling more number of data which is of having different type of values, we can prescribe or we can go for using array of structures, right. So, having now got to learn about using array of structures and using array within a structure. Okay. I hope that we might have understood that how and in what way the accessing will be different from using array of structures and arrays within a structure. Also, we have learnt the basic operations of initializing, accessing the members and modifying the members with respect to array of structures as well as arrays within a structure. So, with respect to array of structures, we have learnt how to, after storing it into an array, how to access the array elements using simply a for loop. In the case of using arrays within a structure, it is going to be handled as simple member of the structure. As usual, as the similar data types, we can even handle the arrays within a structure. But see to that, if there is going to be a member which is going to be an array within a structure, see to that we have to use some looping structure for iterating the values and for moving from one subscript to the other, even though if it is a member which is going to be an array. So, we need to even use a separate looping structure for handling arrays within a structure. So, I hope that you might be able to understand the difference between using array of structures and arrays within a structure. So, thank you for listening so much. Thank you.